Welcome back to another episode of the MC65FM podcast, the podcast where we explore Microsoft technologies with MVPs, Microsoft engineers, community leaders, and industry experts. Today, we're diving into one of the most underestimated applications in Microsoft 65. Almost everyone uses PowerPoint, yet very few people actually know how to use it well. Business spend thousands of hours every year creating presentations for sales, executive meetings, training sessions, conferences, customer proposal, and internal communication. But what separates an average slide deck from that actually convince people? And how is Microsoft Copilot changing the way we build presentations actually? We answer those questions. I'm joining by Microsoft PowerPoint MVP Fiona Walsh. Fiona has over 20 years of experience in helping organizations across Europe, the US, creating better presentations. She's the founder of Empower Presentations, a Microsoft certificated master trainer, certificated presentation expert, former director of education at the Presentation Guild, and one of the world's leading PowerPoint educators. Fiona, welcome to the MC65 FM podcast.
Thank you. Thanks very much for having me on.
Yeah. For all listeners who may not know you yet, tell us a little bit about your story, especially how did you came to PowerPoint?
Okay, yeah. I'll go back to the beginning. I studied chemistry at university, and my first few roles would have been in corporate, working for various different sectors from oil and gas to automotive. And then I had a role in the cosmetics industry, which is highly regulated. So regulated like pharmaceutical industry. And when I was in that role, I was working in an R&D organization, so developing cosmetic products. And while I was in that role, I was asked to go on a project to implement a new ERP system. So for any of your audience that don't know what an ERP system is, it's enterprise planning and resource. So that was to manage all of the recipes and to manage all of the stock control for the raw materials we were using to develop products. So quite a big system. And as part of that project, I was given a one-day trainer course and then told to go and train everybody. So I started training people and just thought, I don't know, this isn't very good. I think this could be better. So I took myself off and did a IT teacher training course in the evenings. So I studied for a year, doing 2 evenings a week. And my tutor, so that's the certification that's recognized by Microsoft as an IT teaching qualification. And my tutor also did the Microsoft Office exams. So then I did those Microsoft Office specialist exams, and then I was teaching Microsoft applications, Office applications internally. And I think I just became the sort of PowerPoint person within that organization. And the company, yeah, these things sort of just happen. The company would, because it was an R&D center, they would have had chemists and scientists going to present things at conferences around Europe. And it was a big organization, big company. So we had brand guidelines, we had a good template, but people didn't really know how to use it and they didn't really understand how slides would come across to people. And so my manager would say to me, Fiona, so and so is going to present at this conference, I don't know, wherever. And they have these slides and they're just not, they're really not very good. And I've asked them to come to you and get you to have a look at them. Would you help them out? So I think that's kind of how it started, really. And it was just things like, people what I find with PowerPoint is that people don't tend to realize that one deck doesn't suit all different applications, and that's why PowerPoint gets the bad name. Okay, so we've all heard of death by PowerPoint. It's not PowerPoint that's the problem, it's the way it's being used. So, like, you could have a PowerPoint presentation that's a handout, like a PDF, that's going to be sent to somebody. It's never, ever going to be presented. No one's going to stand up in front of an audience and present it. And then the mistake is that they think that same presentation can be given to people live and it doesn't work. So that's the biggest issue. And I suppose that's what I was helping people out with, just getting understanding that concept and looking at their slides and saying, well, how big is this? How many people are at this conference? So do you think they're going to be able to read that information on the slide? You've got this lovely chart and this graph here, but then that's a takeaway. That's a handout slide. It's not a slide to be presented. So that's kind of where it all started.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. Many people see PowerPoint as just slides. Sorry for this. uh, I'm also not the expert. So, what do professionals misunderstand about PowerPoint?
I think people misunderstand its capabilities. Okay? There's a lot of things there that people aren't aware of, like tools and functionality that they're just not aware of. I would often train people that have been using PowerPoint for years, and they come away and say, "Well, I've had training before, but I still didn't, I still didn't get that existed." And I'm saying to people, this isn't a new feature. This feature's been around probably since we went to, there's a big change when we went to Office 2008. That's how long ago that is. So 18 years ago. And I'm like, "This is not a new feature. This has been around since then." And they're like, How did I miss that? How did I not know that existed?" So I think that's the biggest problem. People are using PowerPoint. They've been using it for years. They either have had formal training, but maybe they haven't remembered, or you know what I mean, or it didn't land well with them, or they've never had formal training. They're self-taught, and they're missing out on all these features to make them do their job easier and quicker. And I think that's
Yeah.
probably one of the biggest issues.
Mm, and what did you think? What's skill separates someone who is simply knows PowerPoint from someone who truly master presentation and communication?
I think it's probably somebody that has maybe the time to have a poke around and look at all the different menus, because things are right in front of people and they've never clicked on it and they don't know it exists because they're only sort of, they don't know what they don't know. And I think that's the difference. So it's whether you've been trained well. And I think the training comes with good training comes with context.
Mm,
If you're going through training and saying, "Oh, you can add a hyperlink to a presentation," somebody says, "Oh, okay, can't think of a hyperlink that I'd want to add," and then they forget it. Whereas if you said you can add a hyperlink to a presentation, and the way that could be used could be for appendices. You've got this really big table with all this information on that you might not need, you don't need everyone to see, but if someone asks you, you can put a hyperlink to the last slide, which is the appendix, and then put a hyperlink back again to a slide you run already. Then I think the context gets people thinking, and they're like, so now I think how I could use hyperlinks in a presentation rather than you can add a hyperlink. I think
yeah,
it's the context and coming up with business scenarios that people can relate to. I think that's the important bit.
mm, and you trained, I don't know, thousands of business users. What pattern do you see over and over again?
I think it's really the not knowing what they don't know. And quite often when I'm starting a training session, I'll always ask people what they're looking to get from the training session. So I'll go around the room and say, "What do you want to get from today?" Sometimes somebody will come up with something that I haven't planned on covering, so then I make sure that it's covered, which obviously is good. But quite a few people would say, "Oh, I'm an advanced user," and maybe they've been sort of, asked to go on the training. They might not really want to go on the training. And then I find it's these what I call fundamentals. I won't call them basics, but I call them fundamentals. And then it ends up that people aren't familiar with these fundamentals, but I got to help them do their job quicker.
Yeah, I think over the years, PowerPoint has received dozens of updates. Which features deserve far more attention from your side?
Okay, well, I'll start and talk a bit about the fundamentals because those are the bits that people aren't familiar with. So we'll start on those, and then with some new features that we can talk about as well. So the fundamentals that I really focus on would be things like the alignment tools.
Mhm.
Those are tools that will allow you to very quickly align content on a slide. You can do it manually because Microsoft will have alignment guides, so you'll get red dotted lines. If you
Mhm.
select an object and you're trying to move it around, you'll see lines. And if you've only got a couple of objects on a page, it's absolutely fine. Do it manually. You don't have to use the tools. So you can align things very, very quickly using these guides. The problem is the more content you have on a slide, PowerPoint doesn't know what you're trying to align with what. So if you've got with lots of content on, you've got text boxes, you've got icons, you've got images, you've got all this content on the slide building up a big picture, then you can't use those manual alignment guides because they'll be guiding you to the wrong alignment. And this is where those tools come in. So you'll find them on the home tab and they're under, let me I'm so used to just doing this that I need to have a quick look. They're under the Arrange drop-down menu. Okay. And under that Arrange drop-down menu, you have got position objects down the bottom and you've got align.
mm,
You can align either in a horizontal plane or in a vertical plane. You need to get that one right because if you choose the wrong one, they'll all stack on top of each other. Okay, so people sort of, sometimes get that the wrong way round, but that's okay. You can do undo. Control Z will undo your last action anyway, so that's fine. And that allows you to align top, middle, or bottom, and then left, center, and right. And the reason why you've got the different ones there is, let's say if you were aligning a text box, you'd want to align those to the top because, you want the text to start at the top. Whereas if you had, different type of content, you might align to the bottom. If it's at the bottom of the page, pictures, you might want to align them to the bottom. So, you've got different options there.
mm,
You also have the option to distribute content. So that's put the same gap in between each bit of content that you have as well. So that's also a very handy one. Uh, Under that same menu, you've got the selection pane. And the majority of people that I teach have never heard of the selection pane, certainly don't know what it does, why you would use it. And that's another really, really key feature. So the selection pane basically shows you an overview of what you've got on a slide. So
mm,
for me, I would open the selection pane. Well, I have the selection pane open most of the time anyway, but from a corporate perspective, let's say we're working on a presentation that we haven't created. If it's a slide that I haven't created, the first thing I'd want to do is click on the selection pane because then I can see how the slide's been put together. It will show when content is grouped. So grouping is another one of the fundamentals. If we have a couple of different objects, we can group them so that they are together. We can move them around together. We can resize them together. That kind of makes it easier for us to work with. And the selection pane will show what content is on the slide, how it's been put together, how it's been grouped. But also, I mean, the reason it's there, hence the name selection pane, is if we can't click on something, so we've got layers in PowerPoint because our content is all in a layer on the slide. Excuse me. The content's in the layers on the slide.
mm. Yeah,
Content
interesting.
in the
Yeah.
slide. And sometimes the content isn't over on top of each other, and sometimes it is on top of each other. But we also have some objects that might have almost like invisible space around them, but it obscures what's on the layer below. So it means that we actually can't click on the object we want to. So we can see it, but we can't physically click on it. And that's what the selection pane is for. So it will allow us to select it from that pane if we can't click on it. Okay, so in particular, where we have words and we've maybe put words in an arc going around, say, a circle or something, that has a big white space underneath or a big space underneath that text box that obscures what's underneath. So that's
Mm,
the type of example I'm talking about. And the selection pane will basically just give us an idea of what content we've got there and allow us to select it. Have another example of selection pane. I had a map of Ireland and it had the counties on it. So this was working with a client and it had map with 26 counties on, and the counties weren't named. Okay. Now that's fine when you can see the shape of something. But in PowerPoint, it's just a box. Even
mm,
if something is an irregular shape, like the shape of a country, of a county, when we look at it, when we click on it, it just has a box around. So if the counties were all the same color and we wanted to highlight one, we're clicking on where we think that is, but it's just a box. It's not actually showing the shape of the county that we would recognize or the country we would recognize.
mm,
So that's the example where we would need to, or we would probably want to rename all of the counties, countries, if it was a, European map, say, just to make it easy for our audience. Because it's quite easy to, let's say, I know you're in Germany. It's really easy to pick out that because we know it's on the coast and we know what it looks like, the edge of the map. So we'd be able to pick that. But if we were maybe looking at a country in the center of Europe, it might be a bit more difficult to actually say, "Well, I know it's around there," but when we click on it, it's a square.
mm,
It's a bit challenging. So that's the scenario where I would rename everything in the
mm.
selection pane so that the audience, so my person could look at the selection pane and then just click, and they can choose the country, county, whatever it is they want to.
Yeah, I think, is there options to automate these things, and what automations features are really cool? Because I think most start not with a blank presentation. Most they have, I don't know, master slides, and then they start to fill it all per hand. And yeah, is there any automation things that's helps the users?
You can do slides from an outline in Word, so that's a feature that's been around for, again, many, many years. If you set up styles and everything like that properly in Word, you can do slides from an outline. Yeah, you're right, you need to have Slide Master set up properly to start with. One of the biggest issues that I find is that my clients are often not working with a very robust template. And one of the issues there is that PowerPoint templates are like working with PowerPoint templates is a real art. And what I find is that often they're not really put together very smartly. Unfortunately, I see some absolutely fantastic ones, and I see some that I'm like, oh, came across one the other day. It didn't even have a color palette in it. It was just like on the surface. It wasn't in the actually in the slide master. So that's having a good slide template that's been put together properly is going to be really, really helpful. Um, from a Copilot perspective, and that's obviously where our automations is kind of coming in now, really, we want to have a good selection of layouts. So lots of different layouts that Copilot can use. So rather than like if we were to just start a blank presentation, we get, I think it's 9 different layouts that we would have as the standard. Might be 10, something like that. We want a lot more picture options as well, so that Copilot can use those. So I find where the slide masters are limited in the number of layouts and the type and style of layouts they've got, it will limit Copilot as well, unfortunately, because Copilot then only kind of pick up so much from that particular template. We've also got Designer, and Designer is working from those slide layouts as well.
Hmm.
And some corporate templates that I'm working with, I go to use Designer and it just will not work at all. Other templates it works with extremely well. So again, that's very much dependent on how good the template is. And it's frustrating because not everybody has, that not everybody can necessarily change their slide template either. So that's unfortunately one of the issues that comes up that I have to see, do they have any is there any way they can feed back to the department who got the template, either created the template or the external company that created the template? Is there any feedback that we can give to people? And a lot of the time there isn't, and they're really stuck with what they've got, and it's just a case of how can they best work with it, which can be frustrating. But unfortunately, that's the nature of the beast, as it were.
Yeah, yeah. Um, where I often have, or yeah, I longer used, have stopped using PowerPoint for a while, but if it's yeah for years, there came smart art, and it looks it's never matched really the layout from my slides. It looks colorful. And is there any option to improve the smart arts for yeah to get a better look and more I think what is more custom designs?
So the smart arts have been around. I think they've been around since 2008 as well. So they're getting on a bit. Um, I think one of the worst things I see with smart arts is where people put them into 3D mode. So I'm putting
Like,
people off just leaving the defaults that it gives you. Don't go with bevels. Don't go with 3D options. Just leave the default that you have. That will look cleaner. We actually have some new smart arts that have just been introduced in the last couple of months. So they were in general availability in July, actually, so last month. And we have some quite nice options. So we have 3 new smart arts available to us. One of them is a timeline, which is quite nice. So you've got, different options. It's not giving you a timeline. So you can add the dates and everything yourself and the topics, and it's just going to put it in a linear flow. It's not giving you like, let's say if we've got 3 months compared to 1 month, it's not giving that size perspective. It's just giving you date 1, date 2, date 3. So no sort of, gaps in between. But that's quite nice for, a project, something like that. Nice and clean as well. So not so much the big blocks of color, very clean looking. We also have Meet the Team. So Meet the Team will allow us to put in pictures. So um, we've got a picture of the team member, we've got the name, and we've got the job title. And there's a few different options there as well, which is quite nice. And it will, reorder everything for you the more people that you need to add to that. We've also got something called text cards, which will it's various different layouts. So some of them might just be a straight line in between, but it just looks a bit more modern because some of those ones, like you're saying, they've been around for a long time and they're sort of looking a bit, they're looking a bit dated now. So those are a welcome addition, I think, to the traditional smart arts, those three. So timeline, meet the team, and the text cards. One thing I want to mention, or two things actually I want to mention on smart art. If you have bulleted text in a, um, let's say, a standard title and content placeholder or layout, and then you have bulleted text in the placeholder, if you select the place or select the text to do that, little tip for people here, you click on the outside of the text box to change it dotted line into a solid line. Then all the text within that will select it. We don't have to manually scroll over everything with your mouse and select it. So click on the outside text box to start with. That'll select all the text. Then we have a convert to smart art button on the home tab, which is like a little green chevron type button right in the center of the home tab. And that will allow you to convert it straight to a smart art. So that quickly allows you to have a nicer looking slide.
Mm,
The text cards are quite nice for that conversion, actually. They can give you a really nice sort of, layout, nice and clean with these sort of lines and minimalistic look almost rather than the traditional ones. And then if you're working with smart art and you can't quite get it to do what you want it to do, we also have a convert to grouped shapes or convert to shapes. So if we've taken our text to start with and converted it to smart art, we can convert it back to text again if it's not working. We don't have to undo, we can convert back to text. So even if we come in, so the undo will work while you're logged onto your computer. If you come back, say, a week later and you don't like what you've got on the slide, the smart art, normally the undo isn't going to work now because it's a week later, but we can still convert it back to text. So that feature will work at any time. We also have the option to convert it to shapes, and we end up with a group of shapes. So that will allow us to finish off that smart art because that we might not be able to do exactly what we want to with it. And then we've got shapes that we can ungroup and we can move things to where they need to be. So that is what I would tell people who are doing organization charts. So we have the hierarchy, smart art in PowerPoint, and quite often there might be like a dotted line into, say, another department or something that somebody would have within a team. And that's very difficult to do in smart art. But if you convert it to shapes, it allows you to then copy a shape or duplicate a shape, pressing Control D, moving that shape somewhere else, and then having a dotted line. But you can't do that in when it's a smart art, but you can do it if you convert it to shapes. So I think those two things are really, really key. The other thing, if we do use that convert to shapes to finish it off, I will always recommend that people keep the original smart art and take a duplicate of that slide. So if you click on the slide thumbnail, Control D, that will duplicate the slide for you. Keep the original one in case you need to go back to that, because otherwise then you're always editing shapes.
mm,
So it'd be easier to edit the original and then do the extra bits than it would not starting from scratch, but then having to add more roles. So that's what I would recommend people do, and maybe having that as a different file or having that saved at the end so that you can, always go back to it, that original smart art.
mm, mm. And you say with the yeah a shortcut. Is there I don't know. Everyone knows the copy paste shortcut, but is there shortcuts you say these are really awesome? Every professional should memorize.
I think the Control D, the duplicate function, is definitely one. So that will duplicate if you've got the content selected on the slide, it will duplicate that on the slide. So rather than you putting in several shapes, you just put one in, format it, then just duplicate them. it will if you do Control D to duplicate an object, move it to the location you want it to be on the slide, then do Control D again, it'll actually put a series of shaped text boxes, whatever that is, in. You've also got that on the slide thumbnail level to duplicate the slides. That's a really important one. Um, Control G will uh, group content for you as well. So that's a quick one for the grouping. I I do use some keyboard shortcuts. I'm not a big keyboard shortcut person, but I do use the quick access toolbar. And that's another feature that I think people aren't familiar with. So the quick access toolbar is available in PowerPoint, Word, Excel, and Classic Outlook. It's not available in New Outlook. And that
Mm,
allows you to put icons or features, commands that you would use frequently. So when I'm training, I get people to put the alignment tools on there and the selection pane on there because then they're not hidden. They're there right in front of them to look at. So those are the type of things I would get people putting on quick access toolbar in PowerPoint anyway. I think that's really, really valuable. And actually, one that I did have or have got on my quick access toolbar is to add a text box. Okay, so because that's kind of you have to go to insert and then you're going over here, blah 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 blah. But we have a new feature which is in the beta version of PowerPoint at the moment. So hopefully that will be out in September. So now, if you double click anywhere on a slide, you will get a text box.
okay.
You just know. So that will be coming soon. If you don't have that now, it will be coming very, very soon. So double
Yeah.
click, then your cursor will flash and you've got a text box. So you need to start typing because if you don't start
Mhm.
typing, click away, that text box disappears. But double click anywhere, start typing, and you have created a text box. That's hot off the press, and I think we'll be getting that. It's usually the second Tuesday of the month that those renewed features tend to come out. So I think that will be, yeah, maybe September. I think we'll get that.
Yeah. I think another topic, yeah, especially the companies that pay a lot are the corporate templates. I see so many companies, and sometimes I ask, "Oh, what was the price?" And they say, "Okay." I say, "Well, it's damn expensive." But why are these templates so important?
That's your foundation. That's your starting point. So if you, from a corporate perspective, I mean, I might be helping people doing slides for conferences and that, but I'm not, that's individuals who are going to speak at a conference. You know what I mean? Business people who are going to speak at a conference. I'm not talking about helping people craft slides that are running conferences. That's not what I'm talking about. But it's just having that consistency. It's having some branding. Okay.
Mm,
It's understanding what colors you can use, what colors we shouldn't be using. Because people sometimes do, daft things, or they bring a slide in from another presentation, from old branding, and then you've got this mismatch of
mm,
old slides, new slides, and it could just get a bit of it can get a bit of a mess, to be honest with you. Now, I am not an advocate of having your branding logo necessarily on every slide. I personally don't think that's a necessary requirement because I think that the people know who you are. I think it's quite okay to have things on your cover slide, your introduction slide, and to have it on your final wrap up slide. I don't think they need to be on every slide. So that's something where I'll probably disagree with lots of marketing people and comms people. But I do think you need to have some consistency. You need to have consistency so that when we go from one slide to another, the the size of the title font isn't changing. It's not changing from here to here. When that happens, it's distracting our audience all the time because they're looking at a slide and we go from one slide to another and we've got a nice aligned title box here. It should be the same font. It should be in the same place. If it's all jumbled up, it's kind of jumping them in the audience notice that and it's distracting. We don't want to have that distraction. And why don't we want that distraction? Well, if we're presenting, we want the audience to be listening to what we're saying at the end of the day, not looking at the slides going, trying to work out what it is or be distracted by the slides. We want them to be listening to what we're saying. That's really, really important. If it's a PDF, it's a different scenario, and maybe that doesn't matter because you probably go from like you're scrolling down on a screen, and you might not notice that the title's out. But when on a presentation in front of people, it's the type of thing that can be distracting for people.
mm,
Fonts, different font sizes. We just we don't want that. At the end of the day, they're supposed to be listening to us. Our slides aid to our presentation, and I think a lot of people would use them as their crutch for what they're going to say. That's the problem. So they tend to pile loads and loads of text onto a slide because that's what they want to talk about, rather than rather than having minimal fonts on the text or words on the slide and actually talking about the concept.
Mm,
And I think
mm.
that's where people go wrong quite a lot.
What makes templates successful? I think a lot of companies I work for, they have, I really get a little bit angry because they have bullet points, and then they have one bullet, no, two bullet points, three bullet points to eight bullet points. All these. Then they have it for a little bit longer text, and then for long text with the bullet points, and every time it looks, yeah, it looks the same. And I think, oh damn, that's too complicated to find the right one. For me, it makes me really unhappy. Also, what I also hate was the pagination. So because I have a different kind of work, so I have do one big presentation for all, and when I do the presentation, I say, okay, for the management CEO speech, I only need these five, and then it's do something. I have, I don't know, from 100, and it's page one, page 23, and then so on. And they ask, oh, what with the other slides? And so, yeah. Uh, but yeah, I was a little bit unhappy. But yeah, what makes these templates successful, and especially how many freedom should I give my employees to work with templates?
Okay, I think you need to have a good selection of layouts. You need to, in my opinion, you always need to have a blank layout. Okay, like a title only layout. A lot of corporate templates I see haven't got a title only layout. And
Mhm.
that means that people then are having to kind of start deleting placeholders to do what, to be creative. And I think that's a bit limiting. So I think it's nice to have a title only layout. There might be some branding on it.
Good.
I think it's nice to have a title only layout which has no branding on it. When I say no
Eh,
branding on it, I mean no logo.
mhm.
Okay. Because you've still got the title in the same place if you're using the title, but it just gives you that freedom to add what you need to and to build the slide from scratch as well. Okay. I think that's kind of important. Um, what was the question? The question was around what does it need to have? It needs to have a decent number of layouts as well, because I think it's all too many of the ones that I see don't have enough layouts, and you're really stuck to not very creative layouts. I mean,
Mm,
I've seen some very strange ones. I've seen some layouts with like a title and content where the content is about a third, like the content placeholder is like the last third of a slide. I'm like, well, is that so that people don't put much
mm.
content in there? But what's the rest of the slide going to have on it? And very strange. But I also think a lot of, and this sort of links to Copilot as well. I think a lot of image placeholders. I think that's an important one as well to have to have a good selection of image placeholders, and that could be mostly image with I don't know, something it's sort of, solid along the bottom, which is then where you're gonna have your, title, it's just breaking things up a bit. That's really, really important just to have that section there broken up.
Yeah, I think actually the hot topic, okay, on every Microsoft product, it's Copilot and AI. And yeah, I okay, it's a little bit longer, but I think they oh, we had Copilot in PowerPoint, and I tried out, and I was the like the queen, not amused, because it's yeah, it says me what I know. So can you please make something? And then it says, yeah, you have to click there, you have to click there. It was a little bit like Clippy, I think. And then I have stopped using Copilot in PowerPoint. So what's your perspective on Copilot in yeah, in PowerPoint?
It's getting better, but I still think it's got a long way to go, to be honest with you. I think Copilot is really, really good for helping people. This is either before they've opened PowerPoint, and even if they don't have paid license, they can go to Copilot Chat on web browser and they can start asking questions. So I think Copilot is brilliant for before you're starting. Okay, so there's if you've got the paid license, you have speak feature in the web browser. So you can hook that and you can have a dialogue with Copilot. So or you with the basic version, you can dictate. So you can dictate and you can start saying, right, I'm working on this presentation and these are the thoughts, start telling it what you want to say in the presentation. Just do it's like a brain dump, a verbal brain dump. The reason why this works so well is because you're not typing. If you're typing, I can't touch type, so I'm very slow at typing. So I think, being able to brain dump my ideas is really useful. So I'm blabbering away, blah, 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 lots of ums, lots of Rs, not like a presentation, but it helps me gather the thoughts and put the thoughts together. And then if you were to say, well, the audience is whoever the audience is, I'm
Mhm,
presenting a person, it's a 10-minute presentation, this is my audience, this is what I want to achieve. I want to achieve whatever, X. Give it all that information and then see what Copilot comes back with because it will help you structure a presentation and put your ideas, into a flow. Copilot is also very good for helping people come up with hooks for presentations. So let's say their
mhm,
slides are finished. This is something I would do in PowerPoint training sessions. I I often get asked, "Oh, can you include Copilot in PowerPoint training?" And it's a bit challenging because it's not just a case of what to do in PowerPoint because you've got to set up personalization, you've got to set up the memories, you've got to kind of do everything else, and then there's the PowerPoint bit. So it's a bit challenging. So I would tend to go down the route when training of what Copilot can help you almost like with a finished presentation. So I will get my trainees to come with a finished presentation. Now they're not sharing it with anybody, it's just to work with on their own computer. And then I'll say to them, like, how would you normally start this presentation? And they're thinking about that, not out loud, but they're thinking about that. And then I'll say to them, let's ask Copilot to come up with a hook for the presentation. Tell them that the audience that you're presenting this to. They might have speaker notes in there. There's probably going to be text on the slides. So Copilot will get a good idea of what the presentation is about and it will suggest some hooks. So how to start the presentation and get people's attention. So all too often people start by, well, maybe if they think people don't know who they are, they'll start by saying, "My name is," and I'm gonna talk about. If it can work, they might not do the "my name is" bit, but, they just say, "This is my presentation, and it's about whatever." Whereas they could start with a hook, which is gonna grab people's attention,
mm,
okay? So Copilot is very good for that. It's also very good for coming up with endings. So, like, how do I end my presentation? That could be a call to action. It could be, a summary. To ask Copilot for some smart ways to end the presentation rather than just, that's it, thank you very much. Because
mm,
that's how people tend to finish or a question slide. And that's okay, but let's have a smart finish afterwards. And Copilot can be really helpful with that. It could also be very helpful with anticipating questions from different audiences. So you might have one presentation and it might be delivered to different audiences. Oh, okay, it might be tweaked slightly the presentation, but how is my audience, how are the finance team gonna, what questions the finance team going to ask me about the presentation? And it's going to look at it from the lens of a finance director and come back to you with, well, this is what they're interested in. So it's helping you either shape the presentation or anticipate questions, which I think is really important, and it's a use for Copilot that people don't think about. They think about creating slides and only creating slides. So I think there's definitely more that we can do from that perspective. I think the image generation has got a lot better now, so
mhm,
I use it for creating images. Now I'm doing a lot of training decks, so they could be a bit more fun. Okay, so that's a different scenario to presenting to the executive committee. So that's the first thing I would say. But I used Copilot recently for a training session that I was doing, and the client wanted me to help their staff. So they just moved over to Teams, and they wanted me to help their staff understand the difference between Teams, a channel. What do we have? Channel, Teams, a channel, and chat. And they just said people were struggling with it. So I said, okay. And I asked Copilot, can you come up with some analogies to explain that concept? And he came back with a few, but one really jumped out to me. And I thought, now that's good. I quite like that. And I think it would resonate. So it came back with Teams is like a filing cabinet, an office filing cabinet. And then is the drawer within that filing cabinet, and then your, files and meetings are like within that drawer, and then you've got chat, which is like a separate platform. It's almost like sort of standing next to the meeting room. So that was sorry, standing next to the filing cabinet. I thought that was a
mm,
really good analogy because it does help explain to people what the difference is. But then I said, I picked one of the image generation modes. I think I went with the Black Forest Labs one. So with the paid license, we've got different modes that we can use in Copilot, have in PowerPoint, and we've got a couple specifically for images. So I chose one of those and said, now I want you to create an image that's or images like cartoon-like ones because I didn't want real ones, cartoon-like images that would represent though that analogy. And I had to do a few tweaks, but it came up with some really nice images that represented that analogy for people for the filing cabinet and the drawer and then like the separate kind of meetings and that. So I think it's very good for helping with that scenario. I think I think some of the issues are uh, sometimes I will get Copilot, say I've got some bulleted text on a slide and I say, try, come up with a better slide for me.
mm,
I find one of the issues is it tends to be, and it can pick up the branding, but then you don't have the it's not picking up the layout, and then you've probably got to go back and you might have to edit. Sometimes it isn't always the color palette, and you've got a bit of tidying up to do. So I think there's that to be aware of. And even though Copilot can do things like align the content on slide, I could do it quicker myself if I knew the tools where the tools are. Do you know what I mean? It can be quite slow on doing some of those tasks. Now, what is good with Copilot in PowerPoint is that now you can ask Copilot to do something and you could be working on another slide. So, you know what I mean? So it's giving you that power to wait for Copilot to do whatever it's doing. My tip for anybody that is using it that way is if you're asking Copilot to do something to one slide and whilst it's working, you're going to go away and work on another slide, put the slide number into your prompt. So whatever you're asking Copilot to do, say, do it, make changes to slide 14 and put that slide number in because what I did have happen a few times recently was it actually because I'd clicked on the slide and I was then editing or creating that slide, it was then trying to make the changes to the slide I was working on rather than the one I was on at the prompt. So just make sure you put the slide number in if you work that way in Copilot.
mm. Did you or l well, did you see the yeah, or ha I try to ask this more nicely, but yeah, okay. Where does Copilot actually struggle from your perspective?
I think I think still I think one of the things is that it's hard it's the difference between the types of presentations. Like I often say to Copilot, this is a presentation that is going to be used on stage. So I want, I want you to come up with something with no words or very little words. And I don't think it gets that concept yet that we've got different types of presentations. I think it's just seeing one type of presentation, like one deck suits all, which I already said at the beginning, it doesn't. We've got different scenarios of where we would use Copilot. And I think that's the biggest thing at the moment. Wouldn't it be nice to say, this is a deck I'm going to present to the executive committee and I want it to look like a slide deck that, I want it to be able to understand how that works. Or this is going to be for a handout, a PDF. It's not going to ever be presented in person. And for it to realize that then it's more like a document rather than a slide. Because that's where I think it's kind of hard work. It doesn't really
Mm,
get that, the difference.
yeah, and w will AI or Copilot eventually replace the presentation designers?
I don't think it will because I think it's working alongside the templates. And I also think that you've still got to come up with the ideas. You've still got to distill that idea down into that message. And I still think you're going to need designers, to be honest. I do.
Mm,
Yeah.
mm. And what or how did you see over the years what mm, PowerPoint presentation skills will become more valuable over the next years and which one are less important?
I still think you're going to need those fundamentals. I really do because you still might need to tidy things up. I mean, you can get Copilot to do so much for you, but I still think you need those fundamentals. And I also think what's going to become quite important is, the tools we're using when we're presenting. So those are often overlooked. We always think about slide design and what slides look like, which of course is very important, but that's not the whole picture unless it's a PDF, of course. It's our delivery. So when we're delivering the presentation, when we're actually verbally giving a presentation to people, we need to be confident with using PowerPoint. And I find that people still aren't familiar with the tools we've got, say, in the presenter view.
Eh,
Quite often when I'm going through, I always try and encourage somebody to let me, or an organization. I say, well, we'll do some presentation tools as well. They're like, oh, we're fine at presenting. And then I'll say, do you know about this tool where you can get to the end of your presentation, and if somebody asks to see a slide at the beginning, can we get back to that chart that we just, you looked at? Yeah, that's fine. We'll go straight to that chart without looking at all the other slides. And you go, oh, didn't know you could do that. So it's things like that. And the other way I'll frame that one, this is called seal slide. So you press the seal slides button. You on your presenter view will see all the slides, and then you click on any one just to go to that slide,
yeah,
and the audience will be taken in the room straight to that slide. Another scenario for that one is it makes people come across as a really good presenter, because if they're running out of time, which often happens, maybe it's more of a conversational type presentation. It could be a monthly update. We could include these few slides in the following month. They can, at the end of that topic, just go to the last slide and wrap up, and it always looks like they're on time. It's just little things like that. And I was doing some Copilot training with an organization recently, senior leadership team, and one of them said, this was only it happened to be to do with PowerPoint, but they weren't aware of that. They said to me, "Is there any way that we can have, like, I think it was a translation, when we're presenting?" I said, "Translation?" Went, "Oh, you can do. You've been able to do that in PowerPoint for about 4 years." They're like, "What? Yeah." I was like, "Yeah." So I went into the presenter view. They were thinking Copilot. Can Copilot do this? And I said, "Well, it's not. It is an AI tool, but it's not Copilot. Anybody can do this." So I went into the presenter view. I said, "You can put live subtitles on." And we went to the subtitle settings. That's another feature people that obviously aren't aware of, or that I find they're not aware of. So we put the live subtitles on. And I said, as well as the subtitles, obviously that's an accessibility feature to start with. But now we've got 72 different languages that we can, that's 72 languages from English. We've got other languages that we can translate from to. I think English to 72 is probably the most.
mm,
But we can use 72 different languages, and we can have a translation service as well. Now, it doesn't work, it's somewhat slow, I suppose, in the way that it has to restructure the grammar, because it will translate word for word, and then at the end of the sentence, it will reorganize for the grammar of the other language. So we have to be aware of that, I suppose, when we're speaking, that we might want to speak a little bit slower so that they can read when it reorganizes itself. But my senior leadership team were absolutely delighted, because they then said, "Right, we can save money on this, this, and this," and started taking notes. Never knew that existed. There you go.
yeah, yeah. I think, yeah, building slides is yeah only the half of the challenge, I will say. I think the other part is the presentation or the presentator. How can people become better presentators?
So we have a few really good tools in PowerPoint. One is a newer tool, one's been around for a long time. There is a feature called rehearsed timings. That's been around since, I think, 2008 as well, so 18 years. This one is really useful for if you have a timed presentation. So for the example of this is, maybe you've got, I know people that have maybe been doing it at college, it's for a college course, or it's for an award application, and they have 10 minutes. And at the end of 10 minutes, that's it. They will be told, stop. You can practice with this rehearsed timings feature. And what PowerPoint will do is, every time you go to a new slide, it will put an automatic transition into PowerPoint on that slide, so that you know how long you've spent on the slide. So if you're going over, you can see, and you practice out loud, never in your head, always out loud, in a room on your own or to somebody, and you can see what how long you're spending on each slide. Because then you might say, well, I've got 10 minutes and I spent 3 minutes on one slide. That's too long. I need to cut that down. And that will allow you to do that. You do need to take those transitions off, otherwise it will automatically run the next time you go through that slide. But that's really, really helpful. And then we also have the presenter coach, which is an AI tool, not
Mhm.
Copilot. Everybody has this, and it will give you feedback on your presentation. So you can have live feedback. You can have a little bit in the corner, a little it's like a little rectangle in the corner that will give you live feedback. It will tell you if you are talking too slow, if you're talking too fast. It will prompt you if you're reading the words on the slide, if you are, what else do we have? Monotone, any ums and ahs like I've just done there. We tend to use filler words, ums and ahs, when we're talking too fast. So if we slow speech down, we tend to use less filler words because our brain is working, our mouth, otherwise our mouth is going too fast for our brain to catch up. But you, at the end of running this tool, you get a report and it will give you, the details of what you have there. So are you monotone? How's your pitch? How's your pace? How many words per minute? If you've said any words that might be offensive. So to make sure we've been inclusive of people. Okay. One term we tend to use in Ireland, where I'm based, is we tend to say guys for a group of people. So I would say to my 2 daughters, "Guys, come on, it's time to get in the car." Whereas in other countries, that would be, I'm only talking to men and I'm not talking to women in the room. So, things like that pick up if I was presenting, it would say, perhaps you could use another word instead of guys. It's things like that it as well.
And yeah, that's the one thing I as a younger I really love it is animations. I've done so many animations in my PowerPoint slides, especially at school. Uh, yeah, what did you think? Helpful or this distracting?
I think used smartly, very useful. Okay. I don't, because I'm working with corporates, I tend not to be teaching like advanced, fancy tricks because that's not what people, my audience, that's not what my audience are interested in. But yes, I think animations are fine. I think if you do have, I'm not going to say bulleted text, but let's say you don't have time to do much else and you don't know how else to do things, and you've got bullet points in there, just animate it. So there's only one point at a time. So you're talking, animate it as you're talking about it. Same with smart arts. You can animate the smart arts as well, so that the point is coming in when you're talking about it, rather than having everything on slide.
Good.
We have the morph feature now, which is a transition actually, but it can replace a lot of the individual animation features. And that allows you to sort of change things from one slide to another. So a nice use for that is almost like an animation tool in the way that you can maybe like have a rectangle over a table and you can like move the rectangle down with each slide so that you're just revealing content as you go. That looks quite nice. Generally speaking, if people are using animation, I would say just go for the subtle or the appear one. Just keep it simple rather than things zooming in from all over the place.
Mm. And yeah, I think a little bit about the storytelling. How can PowerPoint help or Copilot help? Uh, yeah, tell better stories or uh, a, a lot of I said or storytelling is one of the buzzwords from the last year. So what did you here think here?
I think Copilot's very good for this type of scenario. So again, I think if you've got a finished presentation, get Copilot to sort of review that for you and see, is that making sense? Is the flow working there? Would people understand this chart? What does this? How does this table represent something? That's what I'd be thinking. Um, on that topic, the standard charts in Microsoft are not very, they're all very colourful and eh, they're not great, I don't think, to be honest, because it's not always clear what people, what data is trying to stand out. So there are some sort of classic data viz type scenarios. Some people like them, some people don't. But things like changing most of the let's say you've got a bar chart, changing the series to grey, and then changing one bar or one column to a different colour, and that's the one that you want people to look at. So it's particularly good for more data visualization type work. I don't think
Mm,
Copilot is very I haven't really tried Copilot with that, to be honest, yet. So the
okay.
storytelling I think it's good for the storytelling part, but I suppose from a data visualization perspective, I think we can quickly change the charts ourselves manually to get a better chart from Microsoft, because that's PowerPoint drawing.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. That's the time we're running a little bit of time. So I have in every round, I have a quick fire round. So I ask short questions, and you give a short answer. That's okay, Fiona? Okay. PowerPoint feature everyone should start using tomorrow.
Oh, that would have to be the alignment tools.
Mm. Is there a most overrated PowerPoint feature?
Underrated. Um, Probably 3D in smart art. Like,
When Satya and Dalia comes tomorrow to you and say, Fiona, I give you all the resources, money you need to develop your favorite PowerPoint feature. What should it be?
I think it would be something around the context. I think it'd be like change this presentation from a PDF into a deck that can be presented on stage at a conference
Mm,
like that.
Uh, Guinness or on whiskey?
Or Guinness or whiskey. I don't really like either, to be honest. I'd probably go more for a whiskey cocktail rather than the Guinness. I live just down the road from the Jameson's distillery, so they make
Oh,
Jameson's down the road
oh
from there.
yeah.
I have to say whiskey, I think.
Dark mode or light mode?
Light mode.
And on presentation, light design or dark design?
Say that one again.
And on the a light design or a dark design on PowerPoint presentations?
Light design.
A PowerPoint or whiteboard for brainstorming?
I think brainstorming outside of PowerPoint would be better. So whiteboard, yeah. I have one in my office as well. So I think I think we're manually writing things down is very powerful. Do you know what I mean? Rather than starting in PowerPoint. I know it's supposed to be quick fire round, but I think that's one of the biggest mistakes people make is they open PowerPoint and start creating slides in PowerPoint when they actually haven't thought about what they want to do, and that can be quite challenging. I think you're better
Yeah.
off, brainstorming first and then going to PowerPoint.
Mm. And is there any big PowerPoint myth out there you will bust?
I think it's that PowerPoint, death by PowerPoint. PowerPoint, sorry, rest in, see all these posts on LinkedIn, rest in peace, PowerPoint. PowerPoint is dead. PowerPoint isn't dead because
Okay.
there's too many corporates using it. And, a lot of corporates are not going to move away from Microsoft just because there's other tools out there and there's AI tools out there. Some companies will maybe go to other tools, but majority of them will stay with what they already have. So no, it is not. There's no RIP PowerPoint.
And what was the best presentation you ever have seen?
Best presentation. Oh God, I can think of all the ones that weren't very good. It probably would be one that I went to the presentation summit a couple of times in California, so it would be one of the presentations there. I can't think of any specifically, but definitely one of the ones there because that's all of the PowerPoint gurus presenting there.
Mm, yeah, I think that's really interesting. Um, and what did you think about the future of PowerPoint? How will it looks in 5 years?
How would it look in 5 years? I would like to think that it would look more slides would look more fit for purpose, as in, not so much content on the slides when people are actually presenting. Um, I don't think 'cause you see, not everybody's using Copilot, a paid license in Copilot. So, even in the corporates I'm working with, they might have a certain, not everybody necessarily has a Copilot license. So I still think it's not like it's going to be we go in and AI does everything because not everybody's going to have, not every company is investing in all of their staff having Copilot. It's a big cost for a large company. So I think it's probably still going to look similar enough to what we have today, but maybe there'll be more standard AI things that will do things quicker for us. But I don't necessarily mean creating a whole deck for us. You know what I mean?
And yeah, when on the next podcast, who guest will you nominate as Scholl's invite, and what secret question shall I ask?
Oh gosh. Um, is this in general for
Yeah,
em
around Microsoft topics.
oh, I'll have to come back to you on that one.
Okay. Yeah, so then my closing question is, what is the one thing every listener should remind from this session?
I think, so what should every listener remember from this session? I think it's these fundamentals. So it's go and have a look for the arrange tools, the selection pane, things like that, and set up your quick access toolbar. Put those on your quick access toolbar. That will be
Yeah,
my
then
recommendation.
awesome. Yeah, Fiona, thank you so much for joining me today. The people find all the informations about you in the show notes on the MC65 podcast page. Yeah, it was fascinating to learn how much deep there are really is. Yeah, behind these tools is that I don't know, millions or 100 millions of people using every single day. Yeah, yeah, I would say thank you. I think it's really interesting. I have to try out the D shortcut next day. And yeah, to all the listeners, thank you for listening the Until 65 podcast. So if you like it, share it with your audience, your clients, your friends, and yeah, thank you again, Fiona. Have a nice day, and thank you for staying here this hour with me.
Thank you. Thanks for the invite.